This week, Rob Fuller, a.k.a. Mubix, joins us to discuss, I don't know, whatever Rob and the collective crew are going to talk about. I think penetration testing and other air quotes things. So it'll be a surprise. In the security news, 5-year-old vulnerabilities, hijacking packages, EV charging apps that could steal stuff. Do we even need software packages? Selling hacking tools and ethics. I hate it when vendors fix stuff. HTTPS lock status. And no Pornhub for you. Coming to you in super low resolution on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. When organizations face poor web performance, challenges building modern applications at scale, or need to reduce operational and development costs, they turn to Fastly. Fastly's distributed edge network means your business can unleash its growth potential without worrying about scaling your infrastructure, whether growth of users, transaction volume, or geographic expansion. Get the speed, security, and edge cloud innovation you need to deliver profitable and engaging experiences. Visit securityweekly.com/Fastly for more information or to speak to an expert.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man who's still in search of the answer to one of life's eternal questions. When butterflies fall in love, do they get humans in their stomach? Mr. Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 783, being recorded on May 3rd, 2023, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. Day before May 4th, Larry is here with me in studio.
I am.
Now, did you go see Return of the Jedi in theaters? Are you feeling well enough to sit? Well, they get the big comfy chairs now. So
yeah, they get the big comfy chairs, but they're not nearly as comfy as the recliner I've been sleeping in at home for the last 3 weeks.
Yes.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I probably could go do it, but just haven't time.
Well, tomorrow you might have to go during the day. When I looked, the evening showings were sold out.
Yeah. Alternatively, I can put it on the TV at home too. And
you can pop in your Star Wars Return of the Jedi VHS.
Laserdisc.
Laserdisc. Oh. Mandy Logan is here with us. Mandy, welcome.
Why, thank you. Everybody's looking good out there. How's it going in studio?
It's going really well, thank you. I've got drinks and cigars and Larry. So, I mean, what more could I possibly ask for?
A bag full of hundreds?
That too. Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. Glad to be with you.
Let's see. Security Weekly community. Our teams from Security Weekly, which wasn't me, in SC Media, which is also not me. We're on site at the RSA Conference 2023, delivering in-depth reporting and analysis and interviews from the conference. If you were unable to join us in person, I wasn't able to join in person, or didn't manage to catch our video live stream from Broadcast Alley, you can access all of not me because I wasn't there, RSA 2023 coverage, including video interviews with leaders from the community. Visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Mr. Rob Fuller, a.k.a. Mubix, has over 17 years of experience covering all facets of information security. He's behind the lines, helping design, build, and defend U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Senate, and Pentagon networks, as well as performing penetration tests and red team engagements against those same networks. He works today as a defender. And Mr. Rob Fuller, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
What's going on, man? Rob, we've known Rob for, a really long time.
A minute?
Yeah.
1 or 2 minutes?
It's a hot one.
A lot longer than that.
Definitely a hot one.
When did we first meet? Was it the Mid-Atlantic CCDC?
In person?
ShmooCon. No, it had to be.
Probably ShmooCon.
It had to be ShmooCon to like 06? 06? It must have been 06.
06 or 07. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere.
I got a question for you,
yes.
But Larry, how on earth did you sleep for 3 weeks straight? I mean, it's probably a comfy chair, but I want to know, is it medication? Is it liquid medication? Like
he was drinking a lot.
How did you sleep for 3 weeks?
All right, I maybe misspoke a little bit there. I didn't actually sleep for 3 weeks, but I have been sleeping there in the evening, sometimes during the day, often at various intervals for the last.
That's
3 weeks.
Some blowout you had with your wife, huh?
Yeah, no kidding, right? Like, at least I got the recliner new and like didn't have to go to the doghouse or anything.
Right.
No, actually, it's another kind of blowout.
It was. Well, yeah, it kind of was. But yeah, Larry had surgery.
It was a disc.
Yeah.
It's a disc blowout.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
CD or Blu-ray?
Yes. Laser too.
Laser disc?
Yeah, totally.
Rob, you haven't been on the show. Like, when's the last time you were on the show, man?
I was only on once, and
Yeah.
that was back, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, well,
It seems like longer.
it does seem like longer. Rob, why don't you just
Probably
start?
longer.
Yeah, why don't you give our audience a background? How'd you get started in information security?
Which
Time?
story do you want? Like that's
The
that's a
most
long,
interesting
long
one.
story.
Even if it's long.
Get started. So I think I got started in Infosec, but I didn't know it was Infosec at the time. When I was still a kid, and the game Genie came out for the regular Nintendo, and the game Genie was awesome. You could cheat at games, basically have unlimited lives, infinite power-ups or whatever. And the Game Shark came out right after that, and I was lucky enough to get, or actually, I think I rented it. I rented the Game Shark from Blockbuster.
Yeah.
and the Game Shark had one additional feature that the Game Genie didn't. So the Game Genie lets you put in codes, pre-made codes that would do certain things, like infinite power-ups or infinite lives.
Right.
But the Game Shark had this additional feature where you could search memory for integers or digits. I don't remember exactly what it said in there, but in the Game Shark, you could play a little bit of the game, push a special button combo, and say, look for this number. If I have 100% health, I want to look for the number 100. And you play a little bit more, get hit by something, you do the special code again, or the special button combination, and then it would search, and you could say it decreased. And so it would give you a list of things, and then you do it a couple more times, and then you would find the memory location, the last one left, that was your health. And what you could do with it then is say this memory location, because ASLR didn't exist back then.
Yep. Memory was just a wide open space, wide open field at this point, right?
Yeah. And so you have it stay at 100, and you play the video game, and you never, like, every time you get hit, it would push the memory of like 100, and you would never die. So I attribute that, after doing a lot of looking back on kind of how I got started. I attribute that as my real start to InfoSec, because after that, I didn't do anything really security related. I went in the Marine Corps, and I was an explosives expert over there. I did explosives and construction for 4 years. Then I did computers and communications for 4 years. And then I went into the Marine Corps Cert, and that's when my world blew up. I learned about ShmooCon. I learned about Hack5. I learned about all of these other things near the Virginia area, and I went to all of it, and that's really how I got started. I didn't have my first security job, really. I mean, other than MarCert. MarCert was, you're a Marine, there's a spot, we're going to put you in that spot. It wasn't like it was like I picked it. So I got my first real security job right out of the Marine Corps at the Senate, and doing that. So that's kind of how I got started.
That's awesome. We want to talk about pen testing. What was your background in pen testing? You spent quite a few years as a pen tester, no?
Yeah. So at the Pentagon is where I was a pen tester. We did vulnerability scans and proved out stuff with, what was the tool called? It was I think you brought it to CCDC. It was
Core Impact.
oh man, Core Impact. There we go. Yeah, and the I was going to say the tool that you needed a 50-inch screen to look at.
Yes, helps.
But yeah, we used Core Impact some at the Pentagon, and anyways, that was my first like gig in pen testing. That was back in 2008. And so after that, I was at Rapid7 for a little while, doing pen testing. That was interesting. I loved the crew over there, but it was a sweatshop, really, just getting through pen tests. It's changed since then. I'm not trying to dog on them, but
that's how it was at the time.
It was, sorry?
That's how it was at the time.
Yeah, it was definitely at the time. And it was nice seeing all of the different networks, but trying to get stuff done, trying to get that report done, trying to like provide value, it just didn't feel like it was doing much. So I then worked at General Electric as the internal red team, as not the internal red team, a part of the internal red team, and that's really where my idea of what pen testing and red teaming really came from, because it opened my eyes and opened my world to what is possible, because there's a couple things that went on there that I wasn't expecting. The first is specialists. So in pen testing, you really have to be the generalist. You have to, because you really only have one or two people doing the test with you. And so you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to know how to create a fish. You have to set up infrastructure. You have to know how to create a binary that's going to get past AV. You have to do all these things. And at GE, the red team had like very specific specialists. So we had a person who knew databases. So when we saw a database, we didn't try and figure it out. We said, "Hey, Yurka, here's the database. Have at it." Or, "Hey, Dorota, like here's a network, or here's a web app, or here, hey Matt, here's the web app." Like we had specific specialists for different parts of the gig, and as a red team, really, it felt like, oh, what is that? I'm going to get flamed for this because I don't remember it, but like when Lord of the Rings, where they all come together and start their journey together and become a team, like that's really what it kind of felt like. Was I stopped being the pen tester and I started being the Windows guy. And that really was an awesome feeling. And I got to really specialize and really learn more and build out things. But after that, did that for 3-4 years. Became a security architect, so I could stop, fixing things after they were broken, see if I could fix them before they became broken. Got the itch to go to a startup at R5 Industries with a friend of mine. That didn't work out so well, but it was a great opportunity. I got to see a technology that I don't think exists even to this day, which was he has a tool. He still has it, a tool that can detect command and control even in encrypted channels, and it was super effective. So I basically was there to prove it out objectively, right? And to try all of the C2s that I could find and see if he could catch it, and it really did. But unfortunately, that company went under, or not really went under. It got sold. But then I went to IBM, where I became a pen tester again, and Cruise Automation and Uber, where I was an internal red team. And then COVID hit. Black Hills took me in, which was amazing. Loved John Strand.
Yeah, I saw him this past. He and I got to hang out for the first time in a while this weekend at B-Sides Charm.
Yeah. I can't thank him enough for that opportunity. But I will say that, like, I knew that pen testing really wasn't consulting pen testing really wasn't where my heart lied. And then I got the opportunity to become a director. um, threw in my hat to be, a leader and a manager and see how that worked out. And that's really where I'm at right now. I've been there for 2 years, really loving it. And so I'm the director of a red team. I'm also the director of a cyber threat intel team. So I get to put a red team spin on intelligence too. So
Yeah.
IOCs and threat feeds and all that stuff.
Good
So that's
for you,
what I do
man.
now.
Nice.
Good for you. How has pen testing changed over the years from your perspective, Rob? And you've got a really interesting perspective based on your experience.
So in parts, it hasn't changed. There's still companies out there that don't have a really good idea of, and they shouldn't. Like they're not companies with big security teams that don't know how to get value out of a pen test. They know that it's a regulatory requirement through PCI DSS or HIPAA. I don't know if HIPAA requires a pen test, but like they get pen tests and they go through it and they, round file it after it's done. And they still do that to this day. Like the consulting companies of the world still use that and play to that. And the nice thing is like, that's what's asked of them and that's what they're giving. So there's value there. Unfortunately, and it doesn't feel like enough value as a pen tester, but like you give value where it is. So the pen testing really hasn't changed, but it has evolved. And what I mean by that is like there's a lot of pockets of it that hasn't changed, but the thing that I'm looking forward to is pen testing and red teaming and purple teaming and all of those new terms for things start to trickle down into smaller and smaller companies. And I'm looking forward to the day where a red team becomes an MSSP, right? Like there is a specific company that is your internal red team. I don't know if it exists yet. I don't think so. I haven't heard of one, but like I think that red teaming will get to be commoditized like that. Will there still be pen testing and stuff like that around? Yeah, because that regulatory requirement's not going anywhere. And they'll still do, 40-page reports for no good reason, put it on the round file at the end of it and check the box, right? Like it's still going to exist. But I think that at bigger companies or Fortune 500, at least they're evolving and learning that an internal team is way more valuable.
Yeah, but I like what you're saying, Rob, because it sounds like you're a proponent of it being kind of woven into the fabric, right? So,
absolutely.
Like you said, if you're a big company, you've got your own diversified red team from what the way you described it. If you're smaller and maybe you have an MSP or MSSP, they are an internal, like an external internal red team for you.
I look forward to that day. I don't think it exists yet. So some of the value that an internal red team gives is, and some people would consider it cheating, right? But like an internal red team will know and learn over time all of the pockets where the actual risk exists. And so like pen testing, you get a cursory glance. You look at it and it's like, here, I can get to domain admin through this one means or these two means, and I'm done. But like root cause analysis and looking at why that happened is what an internal red team can actually do. They spend the time, they learn the company, they learn the people, they learn why certain things happen, and that's what I think is super valuable, and that's what I think would work really well as a MSP. If it exists, and they might exist already, but I haven't heard of one.
Yeah, no, Rob, and I think about that, and you talk about that internal team, like an internal team, because they've been there, they know where the skeletons are in the closets, they know where the shadow IT is, they know the mistakes that folks are making, they know how they had to log in that morning to get access to their email and what processes are probably broken. Like that's the same thing that is going to take 3-4 years for a determined adversary to figure out. But that pen tester on the inside has that knowledge already. They know where those skeletons lie. They can then, when they do their internal pen test, can go poke, find all the bad things, and give much more detailed results about the things that they know that need to be fixed before that determined adversary can figure that out in the 3 to 4 year period, so to speak.
Yeah. So at General Electric, there was this one adversary that we dealt with. I forget the name of it, but it's another open my eyes kind of thing. I learned about it, and they would send a fish, and it was a rotten fish. It was horrible. Like they'd send it to like 1,000 GE employees, and they'd maybe pop one or two. And not only that, they would get kicked out super fast. So these were throwaway fishes. But what we didn't know at the time, or they figured it out, like the incident response team, but like what they didn't know at the time when it began was these were information gathering excursions, discoveries. I forget words, but they would pop in, learn a little bit about the environment, and go dark for 6 months, and do it again in 6 months. And so after, I think it was 2.5 or 3 years, they did one more. They popped in to this piece of GE, and they went from 0 to domain admin in, I think it was 15 minutes fast. So they learned how fast the incident response could handle those types of fish. And they learned that if they were in this time frame, they could do this amount of damage. And they learned these are the users that I have to get to. Like over time, they learned those things, just like you're saying. And that was, I wasn't on the investigative team. They learned all this. They figured it all out. But I got to learn about it as one of the threat actors they wanted us to simulate. And it just blew my mind that like some threat actors, some bad guys, some criminal actors have that amount of time, and they will absolutely use it. And they don't have to use, kernel level drivers to get in and stay in and be silent and sleep for 30 hours before each check-in. Like they can use dumb, easy stuff and do one step at a time over years and learn it. So that's why as red teams, internal red teams, that's why we got to look at what that looks like and learn that, because like you're not going to get that from a general pen test.
Yeah, like that's taking the advanced out of advanced persistent threat. It was just left with a persistent threat, right? I mean, they weren't doing anything particularly complicated, but it was persistent over and over again, and every time they learned something.
Absolutely,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was like it was already after the investigation was done and everything that I learned about it, and just going through their notes and what they were learning from an investigative point of view, and how they ultimately stopped it and got, were able to tick up on them, was really cool, and really cool secret sauce and stuff.
How have the techniques changed, Rob? And specifically, I want to talk about Jurassic Malware, which is interesting because I got a shirt. The one T-shirt that I got this weekend was the Jurassic Malware one from BHIS. Were you there when they created that?
Yeah, don't piss off dinosaurs. You'll get your ass kicked.
No, I didn't know they had a shirt called Jurassic Malware. I thought I'd made that up, but oh well. So over time, and I learned this really early on in my career. I used to hang out with some people that worked on like rules for Snort and stuff, and they told me that every so often they have to prune the list of rules so that you don't overload the system that's doing the like checks, right? And that happens with antivirus and all of other things like EDR. And so if you did something that was so old, they no longer had a check for it. Like me as a pen tester, I'd assume you just keep everything, but that was, being naive. And so Jurassic Malware came to be by like seeing all of these virtualization and Docker and other setups where you were taking the visibility of the EDR or Defender or AV or network in some cases away from and splitting it off of the main OS. right? So you have all of this visibility on the main OS, but now I have Docker, which I can't look inside of, or I can, but the AV EDR doesn't do it. Windows as a subsystem, Windows subsystem for Linux, or the other way around, and Hyper-V and VirtualBox and even Java. So I still can't find it. I really tried looking, but there was a talk at like DEF CON 9 or 10. I was still in the Marine Corps at the time. I watched this talk and it just blew my mind. So this guy made a piece of malware that was not a binary like it was almost all at the time, like Windows Metasploit payloads were all binaries. And it was a full-on XP VM being virtualized inside of Java. And it was a very cut down, I think it was like Windows CE actually, but he was running Windows inside of Java, and he had like a simple binary running and showing that AV didn't catch it, even though it had ECARs in it. And it just blew my mind. That opened my mind up to the possibility that this is another method that you can use to bypass AV and EDR and all that stuff. XDR, I guess, is the now new craze. So I started playing with it, and one of my favorites is running QEMU or however you want to pronounce it.
QEMU.
I'm sorry?
QEMU. I don't know. That's just one way people pronounce it. Yeah. I jump around. So that way there's someone that likes the way I'm pronouncing it and someone that's mildly pissed off.
Sounds good. I tried putting XP, like a really cut down version of XP, removing all the extra features, inside of QEMU, and I put Poison Ivy on it, and I put it onto a Windows 10 box. And obviously, because it's inside of an image, it worked just fine. And me as an attacker, I think that a lot of people or a lot of pen testers focus on like access to the system or access to like the elevation to system or administrator, and looking at the system itself, when network access is usually just all you need, right? If I Alpine is a very small version of Linux. It's cut down. I can get it down to 100 megs. I can put responder on that thing, get it in QEMU or however you want to pronounce it, and then have it be on a virtual NIC on the Windows host and be doing responder stuff. Like, and AV is not going to catch it. The only thing you're ever going to see it from is network based or like off if you start doing like relays and stuff. But like, Defender's never going to see that, and it doesn't look in it. And QEMU with networks these days, like you can load a 100 meg file onto a victim pretty easily. You can load QEMU with a few DLLs and run it headless, and it takes I think I only used 150 megs of RAM to run it, so it wasn't too much. Didn't even show up in the top thin list. So, but you do have to get that first access, right? So you have to have the initial access or first hit to get past all of the AV stuff. However, if they have Docker or Windows Subsystems Linux or even Hyper-V, which is enabled these days, then you don't even have to do that. You can just load your file and be done. And that's kind of crazy to me, right? Like running Poison Ivy, for instance.
Yeah, everything should count.
Windows XP box on a Windows 11 box.
Yeah, but I like this concept of like the bring your own tool, so to speak. Like bring your own vulnerability. Like we saw this with Baton Drop in Secure Boot Bypass. They were like, oh, like that's not a bootloader I can do anything with, but if I install this vulnerable bootloader, I can do way more stuff and I can compromise Secure Boot. I'm like that's awesome. I'm seeing that trend, I think, more and more, Rob, from attackers, real malicious actors. They're just bringing their own stuff. I think we covered it last week with PHP. Like, I don't have anything good here, but there's this like plugin for WordPress that's written, PHP, or plugin for PHP. I forget which, if it was WordPress or PHP itself. But I'll just bring this thing, and it has a vulnerability that I can exploit. I love this
Yeah.
concept, and I think bringing a VM or even living off the land is a similar kind of attack vector that people aren't necessarily considering when they're detecting at that level.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of DerbyCon. There was the light cosign, and I talked back and forth, and I think it was either Egypt or him, talked about the state of the union for Metasploit, and he talked about this idea that we discussed, basically an AV bypass being a binary that exploits itself, and so bring your own vulnerability. So the binary itself is just vulnerable to an overflow. And inside the binary, inside the execution, it stands up this thread that is vulnerable to the overflow, and you actually use the overflow on the same binary yourself to get code execution, and that way AV doesn't really mess with it for some reason. But yeah, bring your own vulnerability, bring your own OS is really how it's going these days. I mean, even back, 10 years or so, people were getting access to AWS and just spinning up new instances in AWS as they're bringing their own OS to connect to their VPC and get access to the network. So, I mean, it's not a really new idea, but like there's so many different aspects of it as OS has evolved to do that kind of thing. And I don't know what EDR is going to do to kind of keep up with that, because even Docker is a little hard for them to really dig into.
Yeah, and Docker itself has so many bypasses and exploits, especially on Linux systems. It's really bad. I found this one, like I keep going back to it, like if your permissions are wrong on your docker.sock file, Docker socket, you can just, I forget how many years. Over. Yeah, but like I forget how many years old it is, but I can escalate to root on all my modern systems using it. It's amazing.
Yeah. There's a great post on Hack Tricks, which is a great reference for pen testers, and that has all of the different. Oh, actually, shoot. I will provide you later on with a tool that I found recently when I was doing a Hack the Box, with a tool that does privilege escalation on Docker and containers in general. It's all automated in a Go binary. So someone actually made a Go binary that just runs through all the different misconfigurations of Kubernetes and Docker, and will auto exploit some of that stuff. So it's like Metasploit for containerization. I'll send you the link. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I recently saw it.
I think it's interesting that privilege escalation in general hasn't gotten much better, Linux or Windows. But if you dig in on Windows, there seems to be still to this day a bunch of tried and true measures that allow someone to escalate privileges. And I think blue teams have a tough time, putting their finger in the dike, right? Like you only have so many fingers to plug all these holes before Windows could become useless if you locked it down against all these. I don't know, you're the expert. I'm asking you the question. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
Yeah. So you're right in one way. So the way that we actually had at Uber a really cool program where so in Mexico we had this constant outbreak of viruses, and we had go and clean it up, and the next day it'd be back. And so we were trying to figure out the root cause of this thing, and we finally found out that it was USB sticks. And in Mexico, Uber, so in the States, you can just scan your driver's license with your phone, but in Mexico at the time, you had to come in with all of your government documentation into a service center, and so you could become an Uber driver. And there were USB sticks involved in that, and they had to plug them in to do the thing. That was part of business. You couldn't just have them bring it in paper form and then you scan it. They were asked to do USB. So we tried to think of ways to lock this down. We locked down the systems really well as much as we could, and still get viruses, just as you were talking about. And then a few weeks into the program or the project to try and fix this, I don't remember who it was, but we came up with the idea of just sending them Chromebooks. And so they had to, everything was web apps anyways. So they were, dragging and dropping files. So we sent them all Chromebooks, and the vulnerabilities, the viruses were all Windows based or Mac based sometimes. And they didn't really do anything to the Chromebook, right? So we got rid of all of the functionality they didn't need in a Windows system
and replaced it with
Chromebooks.
Replace it with Linux. Rob's like,
I mean,
I wish the camera could have been on you when I stated that, not me. Rob's body language was hilarious.
It is still Linux, but like it didn't. Like the interface itself is pretty locked down. You have to go through, like the developer mode, like screw. You have to
I was going to say
open the thing up and unscrew it.
Yeah, you unscrew it.
A lot harder,
for sure. But interesting that the solution was Chromebooks that you probably spent like $200, and that included all 100 of them or whatever.
And our virus problem went away, and they loved them because the battery life worked a lot longer. The ability for them to like just bring it everywhere instead of having to be at a desk, it worked wonders for them. And I've been trying to push this exact same idea to like every company I've worked for ever since, because like it really works. So give finance Chromebooks, give leadership Chromebooks, give everyone who doesn't need like a development environment Chromebooks, and you will see a vast decrease in your vulnerability, or your vulnerability management team will love you because it'll just skyrocket down. But like the attack surface will go away too.
The problem with Chromebooks today that I've had, I don't know how much better or if it's any better today, is that your enterprise management and security tools typically don't include Chromebook support. I don't know if that's probably still true today, but
they do. They've
gotten better.
So Jamf supports it.
Nice.
Workspace ONE supports Chromebooks, and I think that is really due to the coronavirus, right? Because COVID locked everyone away, so that all the school systems had to have like this management of 100,000, Chromebooks all of a sudden, and they were asking for enterprise level tools, and like that feature request became really live. So the management of Chromebooks has really gotten better in the last few years.
I mean, the the telling thing there is most school systems use Chromebooks. If you were to flip that and you were to give all those kids Windows on laptops, can you imagine how horrible all of the malware and stuff would be on all those systems?
It would be all over the place. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, arguably,
I gave my son a Windows machine for the first time, my youngest, and he downloaded a Java, like a Minecraft mod, and it was full of viruses.
My son does it all the time with game mods, dude. Like I'm cleaning stuff off his system all the time because the game mods all have some kind of malware in them.
Yep, especially the ones that the kids download. Yep. And it's funny you say that about the Windows and all this stuff. I can only imagine how the computer folks at our high school are, because elementary school and middle school they had Chromebooks for exactly those same reasons, and you could still do some lockdown to them. Moving to high school, they got Windows laptops, and I'm like, what? Whoa. Needs to say, oldest child has a school laptop that they do schoolwork on, and then they have a laptop that they do games and Discord and all that other stuff on, because never the twain shall meet, because I'm not being responsible for that. Nope.
You don't want to be a source of the infection to the school system?
Nope. Nope.
Pre-consulting.
No, I'm too old for that shit.
Cool.
So do you think are the methods that we talked about of like bringing your own stuff commonplace in pen test today? And if so, like what's the defense to all that? I mean, we've kind of stated already, and I agree that EDR isn't the end all be all solution for it.
Yeah. So I don't think it's commonplace in pen testing yet. There has been some virtualization and emulation inside of some of the C2 frameworks like Sliver and so on. But it's not really commonplace, I don't think, quite yet. And that's probably because most of the elder pen testers want to keep their binaries super small and do all, have, stipulations and stigmas around things that they grew up with. And so I don't think it's commonplace yet, but I think as more kids are coming through like college and high school with more Docker and Kubernetes skills, I think that's going to be a lot more commonplace. So for defenses, really it comes down to, as cliche as this is like asset management. Like OS query is great because you can, and Collide and stuff like that, but you can say, hey, if anyone installs Docker for no reason, let me know. If a process called QEMU starts up, let me know. And we're starting to kind of see some of that with some of the phishing that's going on from crimeware, that is sending ISOs with additional things in them, like bigger files. I don't think I've seen a QEMU one yet, but I have definitely seen a Docker install.
But I like going back to your, people in finance should have a Chromebook. Also, maybe they don't have Chromebooks, but if someone in finance, for example, it would be an event if they fired up QEMU or Docker.
Yeah,
like usually,
100%.
I mean, like that's not what they typically do. I mean, maybe, but most of the time not, right?
Yeah, security baselining is the unsexy, security basic that people just stay away from because it's a lot of work.
Right. But we end up doing, Rob, is we put the same level of monitoring and restrictions on all of our users. We say, alert me that like if anyone fires up QM, like don't allow that. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What if it's one of us? Like we use QM all the time. What are you talking about? Like that's something we would do. And then
you turn off for all the other. So you see the alert go off for people and they complain about it, and then you turn it off for everyone.
Right.
And that's back and forth that continues to happen. Yeah.
Sorry, Mandy, you had a question.
I do. Actually, with all the discussion on tools and then talking about the bring your own vulnerability. And I'm curious, Rob, with your background and not only your experience with state organizations, but in private sector, there is a report put out by the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre recently. And their warnings were on the rising threat from irresponsible use of commercial hacking tools. And I will give you a couple of highlights here. Part of their consortium came up with that the proliferation of commercial cyber tools will pose a growing threat to organizations and individuals globally. And that this is lowering the barrier for irresponsible cyber actors because they have so much more access. I would love to have your thoughts or comments on that, or if you want to link to the article, for sure. But do you think that that the proliferation of the commercial tools will actually be a huge portion of what teams are having to fight against in the next few years?
I'm sorry, but I really couldn't hear you. If anybody else can repeat that question. I tried my hardest to understand, but it was garbled.
Yeah, basically, there's efforts to criminalize and regulate hacking tools or commercial tools that could be used for hacking. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? How do we combat this issue? I think you and I probably agree. Hacking is not a crime,
and
right?
I think it ultimately was, lots of proliferation of commercial tools. Do you think? And what are your thoughts about those defenders over the next, say, 5 years? Do you think that they're actually going to be spending more time fighting commercial tools that the adversaries have acquired to use against them, or is it going to be more of the bring your own exploit, or a little bit of both?
I think that commercial tools make it easy to hide in the weeds, or hide in the noise, and so the fact that everyone used Cobalt Strike is a attributing factor to why they used it is because everyone was using it, and everyone was, or not everyone, but a lot of people were pirating it or buying it real. And so what I think that commercial hacking tools should do, and is start to build out things like Mimikatz does. One of my most loved features of Mimikatz is the light stick. So if you run Mimikatz directly off GitHub or many of the other repos, if it's just directly for the binary, it has a feature that if you invoke Mimikatz in any way, shape, or form, it will turn on by interacting with this API or kernel driver for this light stick. So Benjamin Delpy put this feature into Mimikatz so that it's really easy to detect when Mimikatz is run, because all you'd have to do is simulate, in your EDR or otherwise, this driver, this API being available. And if Mimikatz is run, it instantly. So basically what I'm looking for in more, I don't think hacking tools should ever be criminalized, because that's the thing that helps us find the root cause to the problems that we have at companies like internal red teams. I'm not saying internal red teams are the root cause. I'm saying they find them. But tools should, if you're publishing them, have triggers in them that get people caught. And they should be known. So if someone does the commodity crimeware malware stuff, then they're not going to change or tweak those things generally. And so the more we put that kind of stuff in there, the better it is. That way, true teams that have to simulate threat actors will know to remove that, or will learn very quickly to remove it.
Mm-hmm. Rob, one of the things we were talking about is not just malware specifically that's using the Jurassic, old malware, so to speak, or bring your own, but using older protocols. I think you described that.
Yeah.
You're like, ICMP still works. I'm like, get out. I studied that when I was studying for my SAN Cert over 20 years ago, and that was the tried and true method for covert channels over the network. But these network detection is basically suffering from the same thing, it sounded like.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a long time, 80 and 443 were king, right? And that's because companies started shutting down every other port that was available to go outbound. So you had to go through the proxy, or you had to go 80, 443 out. And so you had to go in and do these, backflips essentially to get through the proxy, through authentication, through all of these other, categorization and so on. But just like I was talking with Snort, those rules eventually roll off. And so ICMP has become very common these days to be used and required in a lot of cases. I think I don't remember exactly what software, but I was looking at some software the other day, and it was a management software, and it required ping to work, or it thought everything was down. And you couldn't turn off that feature. And so I was doing a test a couple of years ago now, that we had, and I'll preface this real quick with, I'm really sad at the state of affairs of ICMP tools. They used to be really super well done, and the only things you can find left are ptunnel and what's the other one? There's a ICMP T, and a few others. But all of those tools have also rolling off, it seems, from the open source security tools list. But anyways, using tools like that, because ICMP is allowed out, you can do tunneling, and ICMP has a lot of features set to it. And so this test we were on, it was fun because we had SSH over ICMP. So we had SSH access, and then we had, I was using Alpine to put a piece of malware inside of a VM, and I loaded the VM over ICMP, over SSH, over this HTTP API access to the ESXi server, to load an Alpine binary so that it'd run inside of a secure network. And like, I don't know. I just love ICMP these days. It really is super effective because no one looks at it. It doesn't show up in all the defenders seem to look at, their web logs and proxy logs and all EDR logs, but they don't see like the network logs anymore. And ICMP spiking to, I think it was 40 gigs worth of traffic didn't do anything for some reason.
Yeah, they have to be looking.
Yeah.
And have, some kind of network monitoring capability. And if you did, and you were looking, you would go, wow, that's an anomaly. I mean, that's what we used to practice. Like back in my day, we used to look at packet captures, and then we used to go, show me the top protocols between today and yesterday. And if ICMP was at 2% yesterday and 80% today, I'm like, wow, that's someone's doing something bad. Of course, it was too late. Something bad is already happening, but at least you catch it before things get really bad.
Yeah, the decade of the net flow analysis has gone away. Sorry.
Yeah, everyone's all about EDR, cloud, blah, blah, blah. Forget about good old-fashioned
new
networking.
shiny.
Right? Interesting. Man, did you have another question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear a little. I can hear a little better. Rob's having trouble hearing you though, and that's a mixer thing. So
okay, I'll try this and you can repeat it. So from your Jurassic Malware talk, you said that empowerment is the key to security success. So empower your users and admins. Can you give an overview of what you mean by that?
I heard overview of something. I'm sorry. What do you want?
Paul, summarize.
You said the empowerment is the key to security success. Empower your users and admins. What did you mean by that in the Jurassic Malware talk? If you remember that, because that might have been a little while ago. Like I even talked this weekend, and if you asked me a question about it, I probably would be like, I don't know. I got to look at my slides.
So we talked a little bit about my history and my career. And I think out of all of the pen tests, hundreds of pen test red team engagements that I've been on, I think maybe 2 of them, if that, or maybe could be, a handful, has ever been, I've ever been caught because of a blue team thing, right? It was most of the time I've ever been caught is always sysadmins or users seeing something weird. And so the thing I'd like to be more common in the industry and in general is the ability and the ease to report things. Say, hey, so where I work right now, we're working on having an internal bug bounty program so that people can report things like, hey, my CPU was running really high and it had this, weird process. Can you look at it? Can you take a look or whatever? And most of the time it's some runaway, sysadmin tool or whatever, but like,
or it's Chrome.
Or Chrome. But like the key is, and I think is to make it so easy for your users to say, this is weird. And this shouldn't be the way it should be. This is not what I'm expecting, and have it be a security issue when that happens. For example, especially for sysadmins, there was a test that I was on where this admin, every time his user was used, it was sort of like Duo. He would have anywhere on the networks type 3 network access. If his user was used on the network, it would send him via logs. It would pull in the logs and send him a message in Slack saying, hey, was this you going from here to here? And he knew when that was him, right? He knew that that's where he was going. So if you empower your sysadmins, especially, where they can say, no, that definitely wasn't me, or why is my user, I thought I logged out of that RDP session. Why is my user on that RDP session still, or whatever? Like, that's when you really start getting security moving forward, is because like EDR will not know when user Bob is supposed to log into this, and he logs into this other thing that he's logged into before, right? You can do user analysis or user behavior analysis, but that if he's logged into the domain controller before because he's a domain admin, it's not going to look weird, right? And so me as a pen tester, if I take that and go with it and become domain admin, no one's going to know unless you give them that information. And there have been companies that have started to kind of move forward with that. Netflix is definitely the first one that I remember that had a really good blog post back in, I think it was 2012 or 2013 when they started doing this. And they empowered all of their admins and devs to know exactly where they're logging in and why. So instead of log correlation, like putting all the logs in one place and having insert responders look at stuff, it's log dilution. Like you're making everyone else look at the logs. And they know better than you do if they're logging in or they're doing a certain thing or they're, escalating the admin or whatever, right? They're accessing a certain website. So that's what I mean by empowering users.
Yeah, this is a great idea. When I worked in a financial industry, this was just part of your training. There was an incident report, and you all had to learn to file incidents whenever there was any kind of complaint, like somebody got paid the wrong amount of money or something. And that should just be part of your staff training. They should know how to report some kind of computer incident. Yeah,
absolutely. Like one of the times that I got caught was I was sitting inside the company. It wasn't a physical. I was just invited in to do a pen test, so I was doing it inside. So I was sitting in an office right next to the CISO for this company in Houston, and the database admin ran past me, and he's like caught onto the CISO's door, and he's like, "Hey, the Oracle database is going at 100%. Like, I don't know what's going on. There's a query in there that is looking for every single user and their passwords. Like, is this you guys? Are you doing a scan?" And he's like, "Rob." And
wait,
so
hold on. I want to pause you right there.
And
I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it. One of Rob's.
I should have done a better query.
I like that one of Rob's indicators of compromise is if you see a sysadmin running.
Yeah, exactly.
Rob! We're getting hacked. Something bad's really it's happening. It's happening.
100%. That is the best indicator of compromise ever.
I mean, it's probably too late, but
but it is an indicator.
It is an indicator. Oh my God, I love that so much. Oh boy. Rob, I don't know that you even answered 5 questions on this on the show before. Have you?
Did I answer? I think I answered the 5 questions the first time I was on, but I'm game for it now. I'll see how things have changed.
Yeah, they have. They changed a little bit. All right. So, Rob, you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
Hit me.
3 words to describe yourself.
Open-minded, optimistic.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Spoon.
If you were to write a book about yourself, what would the title be?
He tried to change things and no one listened.
No.
What is your favorite hacker movie?
Oh, that's easy. Sneakers.
Oh,
yes.
I thought for sure it was hackers. I was all right. Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
Oh man, parents, because Robin Williams, 100%.
Nice.
That would be amazing. And let's see, Michael Jordan.
There you go.
Nice.
Amazing. Rob, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Coming up next, the security news and how you won't be able to get to Pornhub if you're in this state. Stay tuned.